morning, everyone. Welcome to the Periphery webinar series. We are going to be hosting a webinar every month and bringing you really interesting topics and speakers. So we look forward to your continued participation. So without further ado, I would like to get into introducing our panelists today. Joining us is Abi Day, the Chief Product Officer and CTO of Periphery. Abi brings with him 25 years of experience in storage and exceptionally competent at solving customers' problems with technology. Along with him, we have Jason Purr, who's the CTO of M&E Solutions at Periphery. Jason is an AI evangelist and has had a decade of experience in asset management and workflow automation space. My name is Deepika Bajaj, and I have the privilege to run marketing here in the US and in LATAM for Periphery. So, without any further ado, I'm going to go straight into our webinar. Abi, Tier 1 storage is typically a high performance, high cost storage. How can organizations effectively allocate Tier 1 storage?
Yeah, thanks, Deepika, for the introduction. So let's kind of take a step back, right? I mean, over the last 30, 40 years of the industry, especially in media and entertainment, where really Periphery is focused to kind of target some of the problems. How are customers really managing storage and infrastructure? Typical last 30 years, land your storage, land your media asset, a video, a piece of video on your Tier 1 storage, right? That has been the use case. Once you are done ingesting it, then migrate into another tiering like Tier 2 for a secondary or a tiered storage solution. That is today. That is status quo, right? So question is, like you said, it's really expensive. Those Tier 1 storage devices are expensive. Do you want to ingest all your storage, all your asset into Tier 1? And that's where come in, the concept of storage tiering. Storage tiering in its fundamental sense, it means I want to put my data as to the right tier of storage where it should be, right? And that's kind of where we want to discuss today, as far as how do we help customers maneuver through that storage tiering conundrum. So if we can proceed one slide, Deepika, just look at a little bit, double click on what challenges do we look in storage tiering today when it comes to a media and entertainment industry. For end users, could be broadcast, sports, news, and even corporate media, right? It's the same set of challenges. We talk to customers all the time, Jason, me, and our sales organizations, and we hear all the same feedback. I can't find my data is. I can't find where my data is. I know it's there, but I have so much data in so many tiers, I don't know where it is. So it's about visibility to the data. It's about access to the data. It's about being able to search fast, effectively. Second challenge is I have bought all these tiers, but I don't know how to utilize them effectively for running my business operationally efficiently, right? I don't know how to utilize my storage from my storage tiering. And resulting is the cost, this high cost. The cost is everybody wants to have it lesser cost and lower TCO. That's kind of where we see the storage tiering challenges when it comes to media and entertainment for an infrastructure space. So does that make sense, Monica?
Yes, very insightful. I really appreciate it. One question that, I want to dive deeper for the benefit of our listeners is that when you say that it's hard to find content, really, what is what kind of frustration can that lead to? And what does it cost to the business when people are not able to discover their content or access it immediately?
Well, there are three parts of the answer. One is, why do you need the content for? You need the content for searching. Media industry, it depends on remonetization. The more the piece of video is repeated, the more it can be monetized, right? So you want to search the media effectively, fast, when the user needs it. So that's one. What kind of media do you want? Why do you need it? You want to, it's not a restore situation, you want to show it back into replay. We call it replay, right? Second is, why, how do you, what depends on it? It's all decision making, right? Sometimes that piece of information that you're searching from your storage really leads to a decision support systems that runs your business. And that's where the media data, the data in itself is the video, but it's really the decoration, the embellishments, we call it metadata of the video. That's important, and that needs to be searched and looked at. So that's why it's very important to have it fast, have it effective, and have it help the business support its decision support metrics.
Great. Thank you. Moving on, Jason, I want to just kind of dive into this new, like, we don't want to call it the new word, the AI word, and you are one of the biggest enthusiasts or the evangelist here. I want to ask you, how does AI really effective in storage tiering?
Yeah, so AI can help a lot in storage tiering because, like Abhi mentioned, a lot of times people need to be able to keep that tier one storage more clean. And so historically, what tends to always happen is people ingest all their content into tier one. It stays in tier one until someone decides they're ready to archive. And at that point, they try to archive it. But what ends up happening in that world is that people get to 90%, 95% thresholds on their tier one storage, which isn't healthy for the storage, can cause problems for it, and ends up causing stress and chaos within the business because people start running out of places to put things and no one knows what they can delete. And so what we're saying is instead, if people start ingesting that content directly to tier two, which is possible when you're receiving it from outbound, or if they're ingesting content locally and pushing it to tier two right away, we've been telling people to do this for a long time, but there's been resistance because there's not a lot of benefit to the actual end users doing this. With AI, what we're able to do is say it's not just about backing up, it's about backing up that data and enriching it. And every time content gets ingested, we want to ingest the data and enrich it and enhance it with metadata so that now it's on your tier two, it's protected, it's searchable, and it's easily accessible by everyone throughout the organization, not just the editors as well, but actually everyone in the organization can now access this content with this rich metadata. Then from there, if they transfer only what's actually needed to tier one as it's needed, and this can happen through things like Premier panels to make it simple within that world. There's panels inside of other applications, or there's just the ability to download it directly, which can be done very, very quickly because of the nature of object storage and the speed at which we can access the object storage. And so when they transfer only what's needed to tier one, now number one, that tier one footprint starts to shrink. So you're not having to spend as much on your most expensive disk, and you can keep it at a size of what you're actually working with. And number two, you're able to actually know that on that disk is what you're working with, but it's all protected. So when it comes time that you're starting to get close to those thresholds, you can delete content with confidence, knowing that, hey, it has all this metadata. Our processes that everything gets ingested and automatically have enhanced with metadata once it's backed up. So I know I can delete whatever I need quickly and easily to bring back storage space whenever I actually need that to happen. So that's how we see this really effective process of fully utilizing storage tiering and having AI help not only make it easier, but also incentivize the users to have a better process in place to actually make sure that content is archived in the front end.
This is like that solution set, like AI driven storage tiering, and we would love to get a demo, so I'm going to just pass it on to Jason to walk us through a little bit for our audience to see how this will look.
Sounds good.
Maybe presenter here.
All right, there we go. So yeah, so what I'm looking at here right now is we're looking at content just through a visual of Iconic. And the reason why I look at it through an asset management system is you can look at it directly on the storage itself, but it's not uncommon that people might look at something through a MAM system where they're looking at content across multiple storages. And so when I click into one of these assets, if this file had just gone directly onto the storage itself, the only thing we would know about it is the title of the file. This, how did the sriracha shortage happen? But because this went through this process and it went to the tier two storage early on and or first thing when it came in, we did a bunch of things to this content right away. We went through and automatically generated a transcript of this 14-minute news story. And we generated an updated title that's the complex relationship between Underwood Ranches and Huifeng Foods, exploring the sriracha sauce shortage. We generated a robust summary. We even generate summaries in other languages and generate keywords. And this whole process happens very, very quickly. And in fact, in this case, it was less than 14 seconds for about a 14-minute video. And so now we have all this rich metadata attached to the actual content, the actual file object itself. And so anywhere this file goes, number one, we know it's backed up and protected. Number two, we have all this rich metadata to be able to work with. So for example, when I log into something like Adobe Premiere and I have a Premiere panel that I can look directly into my storage, or I could be using a panel to look directly into my MAM. However I want to access that content, I access it the way we normally do. And once I bring that content into my bin, this is where we see one of those big benefits of enriching the metadata on the files themselves. Historically, working with most MAMs out there, if you have a MAM that has a panel up here, you might search and see all sorts of metadata. But as soon as you bring that content down here, what happens? It all disappears because all that metadata is stuck inside the asset management system. But in this case, when we enrich that metadata, as soon as those files landed on the storage, it's backed up, but it has that robust metadata living with the file itself. So when that file comes back down to tier one and then gets added to any application, we see things like this file where the file name just had PR8EP6, which wasn't very helpful. But because it went through this process, we have an AI generated title, an AI summary, a bunch of AI tags. And now we can work with this content much more effectively throughout the entire post-production process as I'm actually, working with content, trying to search for this content, even just within my own bin, and not having to rely only on an external asset management system or an external website or a panel to be able to find and understand my content. This is great value to the editors to be able to make sure that they can fully take advantage of all this metadata that can be getting added to these libraries. Whereas historically, I feel like with most MAMs, in some ways, we've missed the mark for the editors because the editors weren't able to take great advantage, because once they found that content and added it into their projects, there was no more metadata. So again, this is why we say the content lands, gets into tier 2 storage first, enrich that content with all this metadata, then send it to tier 1 where people can add it to their projects like this, be able to see all this metadata and work with it. And then when it comes time to delete it, comes time to make up space, people can come in and just simply right click, go and delete those files directly from the NLE, directly from the storage, and be able to have that confidence of knowing everything is always backed up, everything is always protected, and they don't have to worry about coming up with an extra step of archiving and figuring out that protection after the fact.
This is great.
Jason, can I ask you one question? So if I was a business owner, right, and you
Mm-hmm.
showed me this solution here, and so all I have to really think about is I need to know when to pull the data out of my tier 2 and for why I need it, like I was explaining to Deepika, because as a business owner, my challenge is not the nitty gritty details of how you're allocating your AI, your magic stuff, right? I'm interested to know how do I get back my data. So you're telling me that keep it safe in tier 2. Let me do the AI stuff to make sure it's enhanced and bring it from tier to tier 1 when you're ready to publish or show to your end user audience.
Exactly. And that's another key point, right? Is that a lot of times historically people would ingest, 100% of the content that's shot. And then the editors go through and curate that, or the assistant editors go through and curate that. And all this curation's happening on tier 1 storage. And the editors are finding the 20% they're actually going to use. And they start editing with that 20%. But the other 80% is still sitting there just wasting that tier 1 expensive high speed performance storage when there's no reason it needs to be there. It could very well be sitting on tier 2 and not taking up that space. So that's why we say get it off that tier 1 as fast as possible. If you have to ingest to it, that's understandable. You ingest to it and get it off into tier two right away, and let that be the place where you curate from and pull from and add things to the projects.
Yep.
Jason, I want to kind of dive a little deeper into the customer feedback that you're getting. So, what are your customers telling you, and what's the real message that you're hearing from them when you explain this solution to them?
So people are excited, and we talk about the different reasons why this can really make sense and how this can be beneficial. And there's really a lot of different reasons. But the first reason is from the perspective of the IT side and the people who have the responsibility of making sure that editors have enough storage to actually work with. This gives the power of being able to make sure that that content gets archived or that content stays more clean. It hands that power over to the editors a little bit in a way that empowers them to know that if they need more space, they have that ability to delete this content off of the local storage. And again, you're not going to give that to everyone, but you can give it to a lot of the editors that you trust, and everyone's able to know very quickly and easily if this content's been through that process. Because this is the other issue, is historically with an archive process, editors didn't really know if that content had been archived. There wasn't a lot to tell. But if I look at this bin, I could tell very quickly that all of this content has gone through this process, because otherwise it wouldn't have all of this metadata. Because these fields we normally identify specifically as things like the AI summary or the AI tags. So we know it's gone through an enrichment process, which means we know that it's also protected. So being able to hand that, empower editors to do that has been huge for people to be able to say, yeah, this is going to be great, because normally the editors didn't have control over making that space that they need. The other thing is the benefit of having all this metadata in the first place. Like I mentioned before, when you go through this process of enriching content before editorial, it makes sure that the editors are able to actually search across that content and use it in their local applications, and not have that all that extra metadata be relegated only to things that they're doing through a panel or through some other interface when they're trying to search for that content. And then another benefit is the possibilities of automation, right? So we have a number of different automation tools that we've provided to customers for things like how they're receiving content from outside. And instead of having just a simple FTP upload process or an Aspera upload process or Signet or whatever accelerator you have, where files just come in and oftentimes land, again, directly on tier one storage and start wasting and taking up space, even if they're not going to be used anytime soon. By utilizing this process, what happens is we can provide a really powerful, simple to customize upload form that people are able to send out to their users. It can leverage acceleration, ingest that content directly again to tier two, where as soon as it comes in, it's getting all that metadata enrichment, it's getting protected. And then it's able to automate the process of either automatically coming down to tier one if there's a certain amount that needs to do that, or if everything does that, or based on certain project names, or it can just stay in tier two so that editors can now just search again directly from within their NLEs or directly from whatever application they're using to be able to pull that content in. So there's a lot of benefits out there and a lot of ways that people are really excited about how this is helping improve their workflows, give greater visibility into their content library, and at the same time, save space on that expensive tier one storage and know that everything's protected.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jason. I'm going to get back to my screen. Give me 1 second. And then,
Mhm.
Abhi, I want to follow up with you. You know, I want to kind of bring it all together. I know that I've talked to you multiple times about the vision that you have and what kind of AI enabled tiered solution that you want to, make available to customers so that it helps them achieve all these benefits that we've talked about. So just help us bring it all together, paint the bigger picture for us.
Yeah, so really taking a bigger look at it, right? I mean, zone out a little bit back, take a little back step and see where are we in the ecosystem, right? I mean, data is not going lesser; it's growing more and more. Unstructured data is growing more and more. It's hard to visualize data. I want to get to my critical assets. Problem remains the same. I want to find my data the moment I need to find it, like right now, right? So that is a visibility problem, access problem. So these solutions are, like Jason walked us through very simplistically, but really there's a lot of things happening on the back here. But really the point is, how do I make visibility to your critical assets better? By visibility, we mean we need richer metadata. How do I add rich metadata to the piece of video asset that you have? So it provides better visibility, right? Second is, we have all these storage tiers, age-old problems. Storage tiering has solved a lot of problems in software-defined storage and other domains, right? But where you're looking at here is what Jason just explained is, keep your storage in your tier 2, bring it to tier 1 based on certain description that these AI tools will give you. It's not that complicated. It's very simple. Just bring the right data to your most expensive storage tier. That's kind of the point here, right? And effectively, really what it means is reduction in TCO. And it's not just a 5x or 10x, it's not a number. It reduces manual intervention, because traditionally people look at using operator and all manual search engines, looking at searching as tons and tons of data to find that one asset, right? All these AI tools helps you, find that asset better, add rich metadata to the data, sit in stable storage, and effectively really reduce time. Time means money, and also reduce. The second thing is it makes you effectively utilize your storage systems. Now you have suddenly 80% of your storage tier 1 free up, and now you don't have to buy that device in the next renewal cycle on tier 1, and you can spend that all that opex and capex on really on your own business. And so that really reduces TCO and effectively helps you grow your business. That's kind of where we are. And where really the idea of our solutions lab and things we are doing try to help out is, how do we help the workflow, media workflow, really, which goes from ingest to enhance to stable storage to preservation of the data, and anything we can do to enable that customer in that workflow for that customer. It's really our success, and we want to keep helping that get better and more efficient over time.
Great. So with that, I think we're at the final parting words of our webinar. And since it was our first one, I want to apologize to all those who are attending because we were a few minutes late to join the webinar. It was the startup hiccups I think we had, but we will be better organized next time onwards. But I just want, Abhi, in this situation, like, how do organizations future proof themselves? I mean, that's the whole idea. And how do you kind of see this unstructured explosion of data that's happening, creating how do we create value for organizations? How do they go through this? Because data is going to explode in the next decade, and we know that. Gartner has said that many times. How do they future proof themselves against explosion?
So it's really like you said it, right? I mean, data is not growing any lesser. Media and all these assets are typically unstructured data, unlike storage or block storage, which is more structured, like a Oracle or a database. We are talking about media, we are talking about sports video, we are talking about news broadcasts. These are unstructured data. And you're right, analysts and all that predictions are 300 times higher next year in the amount of data that we are going to generate. It's going through the roof, literally. I mean, if you want to really future-proof your systems, right? You want to look at scalability as your number one priority. When you're a CIO or we are looking at IT challenges, it's how do I make sure I can garner all this data into an asset, because data is an oil, but it's also it's how you effectively you can use it and store it and preserve it, right? So I think that's one challenge, which is how do you future-proof against that huge growth, like you said. The other challenge is maneuvering through that data. That data landscape is huge, but how do you maneuver it? And typically, administrators and operators have used being very manual, right? They have been doing, searching and all these things. Even today, in many of these our industries, mostly indexing and searching are a manual process. Somebody really literally sits in his machine to find a piece of data. I do that all the time with my email, by the way, right? And it does not get any better with the amount of emails I have in my systems. So how do you make it faster? And this is where I think, AI is a buzzword, but not anymore. It's a tool that really enables a betterment of our life, and socially, and also from a technical perspective. And maybe, Jason, you can highlight how you think AI really affects like the overall media and the entertainment industry in searching through this huge data landscape.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of ways that AI is affecting and is going to continue to affect how we search for data, how we find data, how we work with content. Right now, we're still at just the tip of the iceberg with some of the really powerful things that we're offering and the ways that we can pull data off of transcriptions, generating those transcriptions automatically. But we're also doing things now where we can generate things like visual transcriptions that we'll be announcing soon, and being able to have new ways of actually searching through this content and searching through this metadata. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening and a lot of exciting stuff coming. One thing I wanted to touch on real quick too, though, is we talked about the title of this talk is all about the 5 reasons that you should never ingest content to tier 1 storage. And I just wanted to make sure I actually touched on that. The way this all comes together is that those 5 reasons, as I see it, is one, you want to always organize your content before utilizing it. It's way too often that historically we've thrown content into basic organization, organizing in terms of maybe a folder structure, but not really organizing it in terms of having a rich set of tags that people can really find it. And I think there's a difference in traditional organization, the way it's been forever, and new organization with AI, where I think it means more about having all these tags so people can really find it no matter who's looking for it and how they're looking for it. And that's just going to get better and better. The second reason is saving that tier 1 storage to reduce the issues of running out of space. The third reason is you want to empower your editors to be able to delete content and free up space when needed, knowing that anything they're able to do that with, is protected, and you can get back very, very quickly anytime you need it. The fourth reason is enriching all content with metadata, not just some content, not just the content people actually get around to adding metadata to or can think of something to do or happen to have time to do, but enriching all content. The second it comes in, metadata gets generated, period, end of story, for every piece of content in your whole library. And the fifth reason is to simplify this whole process and really bring incentives to everyone through the organization to understand why they want to make sure all content goes through this process so that everything is protected, if not for the sake of the organization and the protection of the data, for their own sake of all these great benefits they're going to get from doing this process right the first time.
Thank you, Jason. This has been an exciting conversation, and we are excited to bring in the AI-driven storage tiering solutions. And if you want to get in touch with us, please reach out to info@periphery.com. And with that, I want to thank our panelists, and we will be back with more interesting conversations. So stay tuned, and thank you for your participation today.
Thank you, Deepika, for having us.
Thank you.